Have you ever wondered why the noisiest people in the room rarely end up building anything real? Think about it for a second. The ones who broadcast every single goal, every plan, every ambition to the entire world. They talk about it at dinner. They post it everywhere. They tell everyone who will listen. But if you check back in with them a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, almost nothing in their life has actually shifted. They are still standing in the exact same spot, still talking, still promising, still planning. Meanwhile, there is someone else, someone you probably have not even noticed, someone who has been working in complete silence, rebuilding every corner of their life without asking for a single round of applause. No updates, no announcements, no seeking permission from the world, just raw, quiet, relentless effort. And then one morning, everyone wakes up and suddenly asks the same question. Wait, what happened to them? How did they transform so completely? Here is the truth that most people will never tell you. The individuals who genuinely reshape their lives do not waste their precious energy performing for an audience. They step away from the spotlight. They stop narrating their journey to everyone around them and instead become completely consumed by the act of actually living it. While the rest of the world fights for likes, comments, and fleeting recognition, these quiet builders are constructing something extraordinary behind closed doors. And by the time anyone notices, the gap between them and everyone else has become almost impossible to close. If you are listening to this right now and something inside you feels restless, if you feel like you have been stuck in the same patterns, the same habits, the same conversations for too long, then what you're about to hear might be exactly the wake-up call your soul has been waiting for. But I need to warn you about something first. This is not going to be comfortable. Growth never is. Chapter 1. Stop broadcasting your dreams before you have built them. Let me ask you something honest. How many times have you felt that surge of motivation, that beautiful wave of excitement about a new goal, and immediately reached for your phone to tell someone about it? Maybe you texted your best friend. Maybe you posted something inspiring online. Maybe you sat down at lunch and painted this grand picture of everything you were about to accomplish. And in that moment, it felt incredible. People smiled. They nodded. They said things like, "That is amazing, I believe in you." And for a brief, beautiful second, you felt like you had already arrived. But here is the trap nobody warns you about. That feeling of arrival is a lie. Your brain actually plays a trick on you when you announce your goals publicly. The moment you receive praise and encouragement for something you have not yet done, your mind starts processing that validation as if you have already accomplished it. The emotional reward lands before the work even begins. And suddenly, the hunger that was supposed to fuel your discipline quietly evaporates. You wake up the next morning feeling slightly less urgent. A week later, the fire has dimmed. A month later, you have moved on to the next exciting announcement. The cycle repeats itself endlessly. This is something most people never recognize about themselves. They become hooked on the feeling of declaring goals rather than the gritty, uncomfortable process of actually achieving them. The applause becomes the addiction. The encouragement becomes the drug. And slowly, without realizing it, they trade real progress for the temporary comfort of being seen. But the people who actually change their lives understand something fundamentally different. They know that goals are fragile in their earliest stages. Like a seed just planted beneath the soil, a new goal needs protection. It needs darkness. It needs time to develop roots before it can survive exposure to the outside world. The moment you dig that seed up to show everyone how it is growing, you risk killing the very thing you are trying to build. Think about the most impressive transformation you have ever witnessed in someone you know personally. Maybe a friend who completely turned their health around. Maybe a family member who built a business from nothing. Maybe someone who walked away from a destructive relationship and rebuilt their entire identity. Now think about this carefully. Did they announce it beforehand? Did they create a presentation about their plans? Did they seek permission from the world before they started? Almost certainly not. The people who truly change rarely advertise the process. They just show up differently one day, and their results do all the talking. There is also something else that happens when you broadcast your plans too early. You invite opinions you never asked for. Not everyone in your life is rooting for you the way you think they are. Some people hear your goals and immediately start measuring them against their own insecurities. Your ambition makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of everything they have been avoiding in their own life. So they plant small seeds of doubt. They say things like, "That sounds really hard," or "Are you sure that is realistic?" or "I knew someone who tried that and it did not work out." These comments seem harmless on the surface, but they land in the back of your mind like tiny anchors, weighing down your momentum before you have even started moving. And then there are the people who simply enjoy watching others fail. They will smile to your face and quietly hope you stumble so they can say, "I told you so." This is not a pessimistic view of the world. It is just an honest one. Not every person in your circle deserves to know the direction you are heading. Some information is meant to stay private, not because you are being secretive, but because you are being strategic. So, what does this look like in practice? It means the next time you feel that spark of motivation, instead of reaching for your phone, you reach for the work itself. Instead of telling someone about the book you are going to write, you sit down and write the first page. Instead of posting about the business you are going to launch, you start building the foundation quietly. Instead of talking about the person you want to become, you start making decisions that align with that person today. This shift feels strange at first because we live in a culture that rewards announcements. We live in a world where sharing your intentions publicly has become almost expected. But there is a quiet rebellion in choosing to do the opposite. There is power in carrying your vision silently, letting it grow inside you until it becomes so strong that no outside opinion could ever shake it. And when that day comes, when your results finally become visible to the world, the impact is far more powerful than any announcement could have ever been. Because here is what people never forget. They never forget the person who disappeared for a while and came back completely transformed. That kind of entrance does not require words. It does not require explanation. The transformation itself becomes the loudest statement you could ever make. But here is where it gets even more interesting, and this is something most people completely overlook. Chapter 2. Your silence is not emptiness. It is fuel. Most people treat silence like something to be avoided. The moment things get quiet, they feel the urge to fill the space with noise, with conversation, with scrolling, with anything that keeps their mind busy. Silence makes them nervous. It makes them feel like something is missing. But what if I told you that silence is not an absence of something? What if silence is actually the presence of something most people never access? Your energy is finite. Think of it like water flowing through a pipe. Every single day that water is being directed somewhere. Every argument you engage in takes a portion of it. Every piece of gossip you participate in drains a little more. Every time you scroll through someone else's highlight reel and feel that sting of comparison, you are pouring your energy into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. By the end of the day, you feel completely empty, and most people assume this is just what life feels like. They think exhaustion is normal. They think feeling mentally drained every evening is simply the cost of being alive. But that is not true. The exhaustion most people feel is not caused by life being too hard. It is caused by their energy being directed toward things that do not matter. They are spending their best hours reacting to situations that will not matter next week. They are investing their emotional strength into relationships that only take and never give. They are handing their focus over to distractions that provide momentary entertainment, but zero long-term value. And then they wonder why they have nothing left for the things that actually matter: their goals, their growth, their peace, their future. Quiet people figure this out sooner than most. They discover something that fundamentally changes the way they move through the world. They realize that when you become more selective about where your energy goes, the energy you keep multiplies. It is almost like a financial principle. The less you spend recklessly, the more you have available for investments that actually generate returns. When you stop reacting to every negative comment, you save energy. When you stop engaging in every argument that crosses your path, you save energy. When you stop explaining your decisions to people who were never going to support you anyway, you save enormous amounts of energy. And all of that energy, all of that mental and emotional fuel that used to get burned on meaningless fires suddenly becomes available for something far more important. It becomes available for your transformation. This is why some of the most significant breakthroughs in people's lives happen during their quietest seasons. Not during the loud, social, busy periods where they are surrounded by people and activity, but during the still, private, almost invisible periods where they are alone with their thoughts, alone with their habits, alone with the truth about who they are and who they want to become. Silence does something remarkable to the mind when you actually allow it. It clears the fog. Think about a glass of muddy water. If you keep shaking it, stirring it, disturbing it constantly, the water stays cloudy. You cannot see through it. But if you simply set it down and leave it undisturbed, something incredible happens. The dirt slowly settles to the bottom, and the water becomes clear. Your mind works in exactly the same way. When it is constantly stimulated, constantly bombarded with information, constantly reacting to noise, your thinking becomes cloudy. Your judgment becomes unreliable. Your emotions become unpredictable. But the moment you create space for stillness, your clarity begins returning. Suddenly, you start seeing things you could not see before. You notice patterns in your behavior that have been holding you back for years. You recognize relationships that have been draining you without giving anything in return. You become aware of habits that you have been repeating on autopilot, habits that are slowly steering your life in a direction you never consciously chose. This kind of awareness only becomes possible in silence. And here is something that might surprise you. Not everyone deserves access to your internal world. This is not a cynical statement, it is a protective one. Some people enter your life and consistently leave you feeling lighter, more inspired, more capable. Those people are rare and valuable. But other people, no matter how long you have known them, consistently leave you feeling heavy, drained, anxious, or small. Every conversation with them feels like carrying a backpack full of stones up a steep hill. You walk away feeling exhausted, not because the conversation was long, but because it cost you something emotionally. Emotionally intelligent people learn to recognize this difference early, and they act on it. They do not necessarily cut people off dramatically. They simply become more intentional about how much access certain people have to their energy. They create quiet distance. They stop volunteering their time and attention to every person who demands it. And as a result, their inner world becomes calmer, stronger, and more focused. There is a season that many people go through during personal transformation that feels deeply uncomfortable. It is the season where nobody notices your effort. Nobody applauds your discipline. Nobody acknowledges the internal battles you are fighting every single day. From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening in your life. But beneath the surface, everything is shifting. Your mindset is rewiring itself. Your habits are slowly being replaced. Your emotional responses are becoming more measured. Your self-respect is quietly growing roots. This is the season that separates the people who talk about change from the people who actually change. Because anyone can stay motivated when the crowd is cheering. Anyone can keep pushing when there is recognition and applause. But can you keep going when the room is empty? Can you maintain your discipline when nobody is watching, when nobody cares, when nobody even knows you are trying? That is the real test. And the people who pass that test are the ones who eventually build lives that leave everyone else stunned. Here's something I want you to carry with you. Silence is not the opposite of strength. Silence is one of its highest expressions. It takes far more strength to stay quiet and keep working than it does to announce your plans and seek reassurance. It takes more courage to sit alone with your goals, protecting them from outside noise, than it does to share them with the world and hope for encouragement. The quiet path is the harder path, but it is also the path that leads to the most authentic, most durable, most deeply rooted transformation. So the next time someone asks why you have been so quiet lately, you do not owe them an explanation. Smile. Let them wonder, because your silence is not emptiness. Your silence is fuel. And what you are building in that silence will eventually speak so loudly that no words will ever be necessary. But wait, there is something even deeper we need to talk about. Something that might be the single biggest chain keeping you stuck without you even realizing it. Chapter 3. The invisible chain you never knew you were wearing. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine someone walking through life with a heavy chain wrapped around their ankles. Every step they take requires extra effort, Every time they try to move forward, something pulls them back. They can feel the weight constantly. But here is the strangest part. They have been wearing this chain for so long that they have forgotten it is even there. They think this is just how walking feels. They think life is supposed to be this heavy. Now let me tell you what that chain actually is. It is the need for approval. This might be the most honest thing anyone has ever said to you, so I need you to really sit with it. If your confidence rises and falls based on what other people think of you, you are not free. You might feel free on the days when compliments are flowing. You might feel confident when people agree with your choices. But the moment someone criticizes you, questions your decisions, or simply does not react the way you hoped, something inside you collapses. Your mood shifts. Your confidence wavers. Suddenly, you are second-guessing everything you were so sure about just hours ago. This is what emotional dependence looks like, and it is far more common than most people are willing to admit. From the time we are young, we are trained to seek approval. We learn that being agreeable earns us love. We learn that fitting in keeps us safe. We learn that standing out too much invites judgment, and judgment feels dangerous. So we build our entire personality around being acceptable to other people. We learn to read the room before we speak. We learn to adjust our opinions based on who is listening. We learn to swallow our real thoughts and replace them with safer ones. And then we wonder why we feel so disconnected from ourselves. Here is something I wish someone had told me years ago. The version of you that everyone feels comfortable with is not necessarily the real you. It might be the version you created to survive, the version designed to avoid conflict, the version engineered to keep the peace at any cost, even if that cost is your own identity. Think about how many decisions you have made in your life based purely on what other people would think. How many times did you stay in a situation that was slowly destroying your peace because you were afraid of being judged for leaving? How many times did you silence your own voice because you did not want to make someone uncomfortable? How many times did you abandon what you truly wanted because someone else's opinion felt more powerful than your own intuition? This is what the need for validation does. It hijacks your decision-making. It convinces you that other people's comfort matters more than your own growth. And the worst part is that it disguises itself as something noble. It pretends to be kindness. It pretends to be humility. It pretends to be selflessness. But underneath all of that, it is really just fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of loneliness. Fear of being the person who does not fit neatly into everyone else's expectations. But here is the thing about trying to please everyone. It is a race that has no finish line. No matter how much you adjust yourself, someone will still find something to criticize. If you stay quiet, people say you are distant. If you speak up, people say you are too much. If you chase your dreams, people say you are unrealistic. If you play it safe, people say you are wasting your potential. The game is rigged from the beginning because you can never win universal approval. It does not exist. And yet so many intelligent, capable, deeply talented people spend decades of their life chasing this impossible prize. They rearrange their entire existence around the opinions of people who are often too consumed with their own insecurities to offer genuine support in the first place. They hand the remote control of their emotions to strangers on the internet, to co-workers who barely know them, to family members who love them but do not understand them. And then they sit there wondering why peace feels so unreachable. Let me tell you, when everything starts changing, it changes the moment you decide that your opinion of yourself matters more than everyone else's opinion of you. Not in an arrogant way, not in a way that ignores wisdom or refuses to learn from others, but in a grounded, self-respecting way that says, I trust myself enough to make decisions without needing the entire room to agree first. When you start operating from this place, something remarkable happens. Your decisions become clearer because they are no longer filtered through the fear of judgment. You stop agonizing over every choice, wondering what so-and-so will think. Instead, you simply ask yourself one question. Does this align with the person I am becoming? If the answer is yes, you move. If the answer is no, you do not. And the noise of other people's opinions gradually fades into the background where it belongs. This shift does not happen all at once, and I want to be honest with you about that. You will not wake up one morning completely free from caring what anyone thinks. That is not how it works. It is a process. Some days you will feel bulletproof, and other days an offhand comment from someone will land right in the center of your chest and knock the wind out of you. That is normal. That is human. The goal is not to become emotionally numb. The goal is to stop allowing other people's perceptions to determine the direction of your life. And here is something that might feel uncomfortable to hear. As you grow, some people will not come with you. Some relationships only worked because you were willing to abandon yourself to maintain them. Some people only felt close to you because you were constantly seeking their approval, and that dynamic gave them a sense of importance. The moment you stop needing their validation, the relationship changes. Sometimes it adapts beautifully, but sometimes it falls apart. And when that happens, it hurts. I am not going to pretend it does not, but I want you to understand something deeply. A relationship that requires you to stay small in order to survive is not a relationship worth protecting. A friendship that depends on your insecurity is not a friendship. It is a cage decorated to look comfortable. And the moment you recognize this, even though the initial pain might be real, the freedom on the other side is indescribable. Real confidence is not something you borrow from other people's praise. Real confidence is something you build brick by brick through the promises you keep to yourself. Every time you say you're going to wake up early and you actually do it, a brick is laid. Every time you set a boundary and hold it even when it feels awkward, another brick goes down. Every time you choose your own growth over someone else's comfort, the foundation gets stronger. Over time, this structure becomes so solid that no outside opinion can shake it. Not because you stopped caring entirely, but because you built something inside yourself that is stronger than anyone's words. That kind of confidence does not need to announce itself. It does not need validation to survive. It sits quietly inside you, steady and unshakable, and people can feel it even when you do not say a word. That is the difference between borrowed confidence and built confidence. One disappears the moment attention fades. The other stays with you forever. So stop asking the world for permission to be who you are. Stop waiting for someone to tell you that your goals are valid, that your dreams are reasonable, that your choices make sense. You do not need a committee to approve your evolution. You just need the courage to trust yourself enough to begin. And once you start building that trust, once you start proving to yourself that you can follow through without the safety net of applause, something even more beautiful begins to unfold. Something that truly separates the people who dream from the people who build. Chapter 4. The Art of Becoming Unstoppable Without Anyone Noticing. There is a particular kind of person who fascinates me. You probably know someone like this. They do not talk much about what they are working on. They do not post progress updates. They do not need anyone to notice that they woke up before the sun or stayed up late perfecting their craft. If you ask them about their goals, they would probably give you a short answer and then change the subject. They are not being mysterious for the sake of it. They are simply so consumed by the work itself that talking about it feels like a distraction. And then one day, you see them and something is unmistakably different. Their posture has changed. Their energy has shifted. Their eyes carry a calm certainty that was not there before. They have become someone new, and you have absolutely no idea when or how it happened. What you are looking at in that moment is the result of invisible discipline. And invisible discipline is the most underrated force in the world. Let me explain what I mean. We live in an era where productivity has become a performance. People film their morning routines. They share their workout stats. They create content about creating content. Everything is documented, displayed, packaged for consumption. And there is nothing inherently wrong with that. But somewhere along the way, a dangerous illusion took hold. People started confusing the appearance of discipline with actual discipline. They started believing that if no one sees you working, the work somehow counts less. But think about a stonemason for a moment. Imagine someone who spends months chiseling away at a massive block of granite. Chip by chip, hour after hour, day after day. For the longest time, the stone looks exactly the same. Anyone watching from the outside would say nothing is happening. But the stonemason knows better. They know that every single strike weakens the stone's resistance just a little bit more, and then one day, with one final strike, the stone splits perfectly in two. Was it that last strike that did the work? Of course not. It was every strike that came before it, every invisible effort that nobody bothered to pay attention to. Your life works the same way. Every morning you choose discipline over comfort, you are striking the stone. Every evening you choose growth over distraction, another strike. Every time you show up for yourself when nobody else cares whether you do or not, another strike. And for a long time, maybe months, maybe even years, it will look like nothing is changing. People will look at you and see the same person. Your bank account might not reflect your effort yet. Your body might not show the results yet. Your circumstances might still look frustratingly familiar. But underneath the surface, everything is shifting. You are becoming someone new with every disciplined decision. The transformation is happening in a place where no one can see it yet, inside your identity. This is where most people break. They expect the outside to change first. They want visible proof that their effort is working before they are willing to continue. They want the scale to move, the account to grow, the compliments to start flowing. And when those external markers do not appear fast enough, they convince themselves that what they are doing is not working. So they stop. They abandon the invisible work because they cannot see its value yet. But I want you to understand something with absolute clarity. The fact that you cannot see the results yet does not mean nothing is happening. A tree does not become mighty overnight. For years, most of its growth is happening underground, in the root system that nobody sees. Those roots are what determine whether the tree survives the storm. And your invisible discipline is building your roots right now. It is building the foundation that will hold the weight of everything you are about to become. Here is what real discipline actually looks like in practice. It is not glamorous. It is not exciting. Most days, it is honestly quite boring. It is choosing to read when you would rather scroll. It is choosing to exercise when your body is begging to stay in bed. It is choosing to save money when everyone around you is spending freely. It is choosing to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of numbing them with distractions. It is choosing to keep your word to yourself, even when breaking it would be so much easier and nobody would ever know the difference. That last part is crucial. Nobody would ever know the difference. That is the whole point. When nobody is watching, when nobody is keeping score, when nobody will ever find out whether you followed through or gave up, what do you choose? Your answer to that question reveals the true depth of your discipline, because anyone can be disciplined with an audience. Anyone can stay focused when there is accountability, recognition, and applause. But the person who stays committed in the dark, who maintains their standards when the room is completely empty, that person is building something that cannot be faked and cannot be taken away. I think one of the biggest lies of modern culture is the idea that motivation is the key to success. Motivation is wonderful. I love the feeling of waking up inspired and full of fire. But I also know that feeling is temporary and deeply unreliable. Motivation is like a guest who shows up unannounced. Sometimes they stay for days. Sometimes they leave after an hour. You cannot build a future on something that comes and goes at random. Discipline is different. Discipline does not care how you feel. It does not wait for inspiration to knock on your door. It simply says, "This is what we do now." And then it moves. It moves on tired days. It moves on frustrating days. It moves on the days when everything inside you is screaming to quit. Discipline is the bridge between who you are today and who you are becoming. And the most beautiful part is that the more you practice it, the less effort it requires. In the beginning, every disciplined act feels like a war. Getting up early feels painful. Saying no to distractions feels like deprivation. Choosing the harder path feels exhausting. But over time, something shifts. The things that once required enormous willpower start becoming automatic. They become part of your identity rather than something you force upon yourself. You stop being someone who is trying to be disciplined and become someone who simply is disciplined. That transition is everything. Let me tell you something else that nobody talks about enough. Some of the most powerful seasons of your life will be the most boring seasons of your life. There will be months where your daily routine looks exactly the same. Wake up, work, improve, rest, repeat. No dramatic breakthroughs, no lightning bolt moments. Just the same quiet habits practiced over and over again. And during these seasons, your mind will try to convince you that you need something more exciting. It will whisper that you should be doing something bigger, something flashier, something that generates immediate results. Do not listen to that voice. That voice is the reason most people never build anything lasting. They mistake boredom for failure. They mistake repetition for stagnation. But the truth is, repetition is the birthplace of mastery. Every expert, every champion, every person who has ever reached the top of their field got there by doing simple things consistently for longer than anyone else was willing to. And here is the paradox that makes invisible discipline so powerful. The less you need people to see your effort, the stronger your effort becomes. When you stop performing discipline for an audience, the discipline itself becomes purer. It becomes about the transformation, not the recognition. It becomes about who you are becoming, not who is watching you become it. That purity of intention creates a kind of momentum that is almost unstoppable. Think about water dripping on a stone. One drop does nothing. 100 drops do almost nothing. But 1,000,000 drops, repeated patiently over time, carve a channel through solid rock. That is what invisible discipline does to your life. It carves new pathways through the hardest obstacles, not through force or speed, but through unwavering, patient, silent consistency. So here is what I want you to do. Stop measuring your progress by what other people can see. Stop waiting for external validation to confirm that you are on the right track. Instead, start keeping a private scorecard, a scorecard that only you can see. Did I show up today? Did I do the work even though I did not feel like it? Did I stay true to my standards even when nobody would have noticed if I had lowered them? If the answer is yes, then you are winning, even if the world has no idea yet. Because one day, and this day is coming whether you believe it right now or not, all of that invisible work is going to become very, very visible. The discipline that nobody saw is going to produce results that everybody sees. The mornings that nobody witnessed are going to create a life that everybody notices. The consistency that nobody applauded is going to build a transformation that nobody can ignore. And on that day, people will call you lucky. They will say things like, everything just fell into place for them. They will assume it happened quickly, naturally, effortlessly. But you will know the truth. You will know about every early morning, every difficult choice, every quiet evening spent working while everyone else was resting, every moment of doubt that you pushed through instead of surrendering to. You will know that luck had nothing to do with it, and that private knowing, that deep, unshakable awareness of what you survived and what you built with your own hands, that is the kind of confidence that no criticism, no rejection, and no setback will ever be able to destroy. But discipline alone, as powerful as it is, cannot thrive in a poisoned environment. And that is exactly what we need to talk about next. Because there is something quietly destroying many people's progress, and they do not even recognize it as the threat it truly is. Chapter 5. The Garden You Forgot You Were Growing. I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself standing in front of a beautiful garden. The soil is rich. The sunlight is perfect. Everything about this space has the potential to grow something extraordinary. Now imagine that instead of planting seeds carefully and tending to what grows, you allow anyone and everyone to walk through your garden whenever they please. Some people toss weeds as they pass. Others stomp on the soil without even noticing. A few even pour salt into the earth, killing anything that was trying to take root. And every single day you stand there wondering why nothing beautiful is growing. That garden is your mind, and the people you allow to walk through it are shaping your future far more than you realize. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, but I need you to hear it clearly. Not everyone around you is helping you grow. Some people, even people you have known for years, even people who say they care about you, are quietly draining the life out of your potential. Not necessarily because they are cruel or intentionally harmful, but because they carry a kind of emotional heaviness that seeps into everything it touches. Their constant complaints slowly become your inner dialogue. Their pessimism gradually colors the way you see your own possibilities. Their habit of focusing on everything that is wrong with the world eventually teaches your brain to do the same thing. And the most dangerous part is how slowly it happens. It does not arrive like a thunderstorm, loud and obvious. It creeps in like fog, so gradually that by the time you notice it, you are already surrounded. You wake up one day feeling exhausted, unmotivated, emotionally flat, and you cannot quite pinpoint why. You assume something is wrong with you. You think maybe you need more sleep, more motivation, more inspiration. But the real problem is not inside you. The real problem is what you have been absorbing from the world around you. Let me share something that changed the way I think about relationships forever. Every single person in your life is either a window or a wall. A window lets light in. It expands your view. It shows you possibilities you could not see on your own. When you walk away from a conversation with a window person, you feel lighter, clearer, more alive. Your mind buzzes with fresh ideas and renewed energy. You feel like maybe, just maybe, the things you have been dreaming about are actually possible. A wall does the opposite. A wall blocks the light. It limits your perspective. It makes the room feel smaller and darker. When you walk away from a conversation with a wall person, you feel heavier. Your confidence shrinks. Your ambition feels foolish. Your goals suddenly seem unrealistic. And the worst part is that wall people rarely announce themselves. They disguise their negativity as realism. They call their pessimism honesty. They frame their discouragement as protection. I am just looking out for you, they say, right before they list every reason your dreams will fail. Here is what I need you to understand. You do not have to hate these people to create distance from them. This is not about anger or resentment. It is about recognition. It is about honestly assessing the impact that certain people have on your emotional health and making deliberate choices about how much access they get to your inner world. You can love someone from a distance. You can wish someone well without inviting them into every corner of your life. You can care about a person deeply and still recognize that their energy is not compatible with the person you are trying to become. Many people resist this idea because it feels selfish. They have been taught that loyalty means enduring anything, that real love means never walking away, that good people tolerate everything without complaint. But that is not loyalty. That is self-abandonment. And there is nothing noble about sacrificing your mental health on the altar of someone else's emotional chaos. Think about how a hospital operates. When a surgeon walks into an operating room, that room has been meticulously cleaned and sterilized. Every instrument is carefully prepared. The environment is controlled because the surgeon understands that contamination can be deadly. Imagine if someone walked in with muddy boots and started touching everything. The surgeon would not smile politely and let it continue. They would immediately protect the sterile environment because they know that what happens in that room matters too much to be compromised by carelessness. Your mind deserves the same level of protection. The thoughts you think, the emotions you process, the beliefs you carry, these are the instruments you use to build your future. If you allow them to be constantly contaminated by negativity, gossip, criticism, and emotional turbulence, the results you produce will always be compromised. You cannot perform surgery in a dirty room, and you cannot build an extraordinary life in a toxic environment. Now, I want to address something that many people feel but rarely talk about. As you start protecting your space more carefully, some people will react negatively. They will say, "You have changed." They will accuse you of thinking you are better than everyone else. They will call you distant, cold, or selfish. And honestly, those words might sting, especially if they come from people you genuinely care about. But here is what is really happening beneath the surface. When you start growing, your growth becomes a mirror for other people. And not everyone likes what they see in that reflection. Your discipline reminds them that they have been making excuses. Your focus highlights their distractions. Your peace exposes their chaos. And rather than confronting their own behavior, it is far easier for them to criticize yours. So they frame your boundaries as rejection. They frame your growth as abandonment. They make your evolution about their discomfort. Do not let their discomfort become your prison. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotional reactions to your growth. You are responsible for becoming the best version of yourself. And sometimes that journey requires creating space between you and the people who are unable or unwilling to grow alongside you. This does not mean your life has to become empty. Quite the opposite, actually. When you remove energy that drains you, you create room for energy that fills you. The right people will find you. The people who inspire growth, who celebrate discipline, who understand the value of peace, they are drawn to the same kind of energy. Like attracts like. When you become someone who values growth, you naturally begin attracting others who value it too. Here is something beautiful about quiet seasons of growth. They act as a natural filter. The people who stay connected to you during your quiet seasons, when there is nothing exciting to celebrate, nothing public to applaud, nothing visible to admire, those are your real people. They are not attached to the version of you that performs. They are attached to the version of you that is real. And those connections, rare as they might be, are worth more than 1,000 surface-level relationships that only exist when things are loud and impressive. So be honest with yourself today. Look around your life and ask a brave question. Who in my garden is planting flowers and who is planting weeds? You do not have to answer that question publicly. You do not have to make dramatic announcements or confrontations. You simply need to start paying attention to how you feel after every interaction. Your emotional state after spending time with someone is one of the most reliable pieces of data you will ever receive. Trust it. And then make your choices accordingly, because your mind is too valuable to leave unguarded. Your energy is too precious to waste on people who only know how to consume it. And your future is too important to be shaped by voices that have never built anything meaningful themselves. Protect your garden. Water what grows. Remove what poisons. And trust that over time, the harvest will be more beautiful than anything you could have imagined. But here's where things get really interesting. Because once you clear the weeds and protect the soil, a question emerges that changes everything about how you move through the world. And that question is simply this: what are you actually growing for? Chapter 6. Fall in love with becoming, not being seen. There is a moment in every person's life where they arrive at a crossroads, even if they do not recognize it as one. On one path, there is attention. Followers, likes, compliments, the intoxicating feeling of being watched, admired, validated by the world. On the other path, there is progress, growth, discipline, transformation. The quieter, but infinitely more rewarding experience of genuinely becoming a better person. Most people choose the first path without realizing they even made a choice. And it is easy to understand why. Attention feels incredible. When someone praises your work, your brain releases a hit of dopamine that feels almost identical to the satisfaction of actual accomplishment. For a moment, you feel successful. You feel important. You feel like you matter. And that feeling is so immediate, so accessible, so addictive, that many people spend their entire lives chasing it without ever building anything of real substance underneath it. But here is the part nobody warns you about. Attention is the most unreliable currency on the planet. It inflates and deflates constantly. The person who receives a standing ovation today might be completely ignored tomorrow. The post that goes viral this week is forgotten by next week. The compliment that made you feel invincible at 9 in the morning has lost its warmth by noon. You are left exactly where you started, reaching for the next hit, the next validation, the next moment of being noticed. This is why so many people feel like they are running on a treadmill. They are moving constantly, spending enormous amounts of energy, but when they look around, they are in the exact same spot. They have accumulated attention without accumulating growth. They have collected approval without collecting skills. They have built an audience without building a life. Now, let me tell you about the other path, the one that most people overlook because it is quieter and slower and far less exciting in the beginning. Progress does not give you an immediate high. When you sit down and read for 30 minutes instead of scrolling, nobody hands you a trophy. When you wake up before everyone else to work on your goal, there is no round of applause waiting in the kitchen. When you choose to have a difficult but necessary conversation instead of avoiding it, no one is there to tell you how brave that was. Progress is almost invisible on a daily basis. And that invisibility is exactly why most people abandon it too quickly. But here is what those people miss. Progress compounds in a way that attention never can. Every small improvement you make builds on top of the one before it. Every disciplined day creates a slightly stronger version of you. Every moment you choose growth over comfort rewires your brain in a way that makes the next choice a little easier. And over the course of months and years, this compounding effect creates changes so dramatic that they genuinely shock the people around you. Think about it like saving a single coin every day. On day one, you have one coin. it feels meaningless. On day 30, you have 30 coins. Still nothing impressive, but on day 300, you have a small fortune, and on day 1000, you have built something significant. Progress works identically. The daily contribution feels insignificant, but the accumulated result is extraordinary. The problem is that we live in an age of instant everything. Instant food, instant entertainment, instant communication. Our brains have been rewired to expect immediate results from every effort we invest. And when progress does not deliver that instant payoff, when the effort of today does not produce a visible result by tomorrow, people lose patience. They start looking for shortcuts. They start looking for attention instead, because attention delivers that quick emotional reward that progress refuses to provide. But I want you to really think about the people you admire most in the world, not the people who are loudest on social media, not the people who generate the most controversy, the people you genuinely, deeply admire, the person whose work changed how you think, the mentor whose wisdom shifted the course of your life, the friend whose quiet consistency inspired you to try harder. Were any of those people obsessed with being seen? Were any of them performing for an audience? Or were they simply so focused on doing meaningful work that the world could not help but eventually pay attention? That is the difference. When you chase attention, you get moments, brief, shiny, forgettable moments. But when you chase progress, you get transformation, deep, permanent, undeniable transformation. And the beautiful irony is that transformation eventually generates more attention than attention-seeking ever could. Because the world is full of people performing, but the world is starving for people who are genuine. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you did something purely for yourself, with zero intention of sharing it, documenting it, or receiving recognition for it? When was the last time you improved in complete privacy, not because you were hiding, but because the improvement itself was the reward? If you struggle to answer that question, it might reveal something important about where your energy has been going. There is a specific kind of happiness that only becomes available when you stop tying your self-worth to external recognition. It is a quieter happiness, less dramatic, less exciting on the surface, but it runs so much deeper than anything approval can offer. It is the happiness of knowing you showed up for yourself today, the happiness of feeling your own strength growing beneath the surface, the happiness of looking in the mirror and recognizing someone who keeps their promises, even the ones nobody else knows about. This kind of happiness cannot be taken from you. No unfollower can steal it. No critic can diminish it. No rejection can destroy it. Because it was never built on anyone else's opinion. It was built on your own consistency, your own effort, your own decision to keep going when every part of you wanted to quit. I think one of the saddest things in modern life is watching deeply talented people destroy their own potential because they become more interested in documenting the journey than actually taking it. They spend more energy crafting the narrative of their growth than experiencing the growth itself. The photo of the gym becomes more important than the workout. The announcement of the business idea becomes more satisfying than the years of work it takes to build it. The aesthetic of discipline replaces the substance of discipline, and slowly the image becomes the entire point. Do not let that happen to you. You are worth more than a curated image. Your growth is worth more than a highlight reel. Your life deserves to be lived, not performed. Here is something I have noticed about people who become genuinely addicted to progress instead of attention. They develop a particular kind of calmness that is almost magnetic. They are not anxious about how they are perceived because their sense of worth comes from within. They do not flinch at criticism because their confidence was not built on compliments. They do not panic during slow seasons because they understand that invisible work eventually produces visible results. They carry themselves with a quiet certainty that makes you want to lean in and listen when they speak, not because they are loud, but because you can tell that their words are backed by something real. That is the energy I want you to cultivate, not the frantic energy of someone desperately seeking attention, but the grounded energy of someone who has been quietly building themselves for so long that their entire presence radiates strength. That kind of energy does not require announcements. It fills a room without asking for permission. Now, I want to get practical with you for a moment because I believe in giving you something you can actually use, not just something that sounds nice. Starting today, try something. Before you share any progress publicly, ask yourself one question. Am I sharing this because I want to inspire or connect? Or am I sharing this because I need someone to validate that it matters? Be ruthlessly honest with the answer. If it is the latter, do not share it. Instead, let that progress live privately for a while. Let it grow roots before you expose it to the wind. You might be surprised at how much stronger it becomes when it is protected from the constant need for outside approval. Over time, this practice rewires something fundamental inside you. You start finding satisfaction in the effort itself, rather than in the response the effort generates. The praise of others becomes a nice addition to your journey, rather than the fuel that keeps it moving. And when that shift happens, your motivation becomes almost indestructible because it no longer depends on anything external. People who fall in love with becoming rather than being seen eventually reach a point where the work itself is the reward. The writing is the reward. The training is the reward. The learning is the reward. The healing is the reward. They no longer need the finish line to be visible in order to keep running. They run because running is who they are now, not because someone is watching and cheering from the sidelines. And that is when life truly begins to transform, not when the applause arrives, not when the recognition comes, but when you finally realize that you would do this even if nobody ever noticed. That realization is freedom, and freedom is the foundation upon which every extraordinary life is built. Let me tell you something before we move on, because there is something even deeper waiting for us. Many people manage to break free from the need for attention. They manage to fall in love with progress. They manage to build real discipline in silence. But then they hit a wall that confuses them completely. They do all the right things and still feel restless, still feel like something is missing, still feel like the life they are building, as disciplined and focused as it is, somehow does not quite fit. And the reason for that disconnect is something most people do not examine until it is almost too late. Chapter 7. Build a life that no longer needs a megaphone. There is a feeling that very few people ever experience, and it might be the most liberating feeling a human being can have. It is the feeling of waking up one morning and realizing you no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone, not to your family, not to your friends, not to strangers on the internet, not to the version of yourself that used to care so desperately about being seen. You just wake up and feel settled, grounded, whole, not because everything in your life is perfect, but because the things that matter most are finally aligned with who you actually are. Most people never reach this point because they spend their entire lives constructing a performance instead of constructing a life. They build an image that looks impressive from the outside while the inside remains hollow, fragile, and constantly hungry for the next dose of validation. They decorate the exterior of the house beautifully, but never furnish the rooms where they actually live. And then they wonder why they feel homeless inside their own existence. Think about that for a moment. How much of your daily energy goes toward managing how other people perceive you? How much mental bandwidth do you spend worrying about what your coworkers think of your performance? What your friends think of your lifestyle? What complete strangers think of your appearance? If you added up all of those micro moments of self-consciousness across a single week, the total would probably stun you. We burn an unbelievable amount of fuel trying to control narratives that, in the end, do not actually change our lives in any meaningful way. Quiet people discover something that changes this equation entirely. They discover that when you stop building for an audience and start building for yourself, the architecture of your entire life changes. Instead of designing a life that looks good in photographs, you start designing a life that feels good at 2 in the morning when nobody is watching and the only audience is your own heartbeat. What does that kind of life actually look like? It looks different for everyone, and that is precisely the point. For one person, it might mean a small apartment filled with books, a morning routine that begins with silence, and work that challenges their mind in ways that feel meaningful. For another person, it might mean a house full of children, a kitchen that always smells like something warm, and evenings spent building something creative with their hands. For someone else, it might mean constant travel, unfamiliar cities, the thrill of starting over in new places. There is no universal template for a peaceful life. The only requirement is that it genuinely belongs to you, not to someone else's idea of what your life should be. And this is where so many people get trapped. They inherit blueprints from their parents, from society, from social media, from cultural expectations, and they build their lives according to those blueprints without ever stopping to ask whether those plans actually match who they are. They pursue careers they were told were respectable. They enter relationships that check boxes rather than fill their souls. They accumulate possessions that signal success to the outside world but generate no warmth on the inside. And after years of following someone else's map, they arrive at a destination and feel nothing. Or worse, they feel the heavy, sinking realization that they climbed the wrong mountain entirely. I do not want that for you. And if you are reading this, I suspect you do not want that for yourself either. Building a life that makes noise unnecessary starts with one brutally honest question. If nobody could see my life, if there were no social media, no audience, no one to impress, would I still want what I am currently chasing? Sit with that question. Do not rush past it. Let it settle into your chest and see what it stirs up. Because your honest answer will tell you whether you are building for peace or building for performance. When peace becomes your compass, your priorities shift dramatically. You stop saying yes to things that drain your energy just because refusing would make you look bad. You stop attending events that leave you feeling emptier than when you arrived. You stop maintaining relationships that exist solely out of obligation. You stop filling your calendar with busyness as a substitute for purpose. Instead, you start protecting your mornings. You start guarding your evenings. You start treating your energy like the non-renewable resource it actually is. And something magical happens when you make this shift. The anxiety that used to follow you everywhere begins to loosen its grip. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, like a knot slowly being untied. Because so much of the anxiety people carry is not caused by life being too hard. It is caused by life being too misaligned. When your external world does not match your internal values, your nervous system stays in a constant state of low-grade alarm. It knows something is wrong, even if your conscious mind cannot articulate exactly what. But when you start aligning your actions with your actual values, when your daily choices begin reflecting who you really are rather than who you think you should be, that alarm slowly quiets down. Your sleep improves. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotional reactions become less volatile. You start feeling like you are actually living your life instead of performing a role in someone else's production. This is why emotionally mature people eventually become less interested in being impressive and more interested in being genuine. They realize that impressing people creates a form of debt. Every exaggeration you make, every truth you stretch, every version of yourself you inflate, all of it has to be maintained. And maintaining a false image is exhausting work that never ends. But being genuine costs nothing. Authenticity requires no maintenance because it is simply the truth. And truth, unlike performance, gets easier to sustain over time. Many people fear that if they stop performing, they will become invisible. They worry that without the constant effort to be noticed, the world will simply forget about them. But the opposite tends to happen. When you stop trying so hard to be seen, people actually start seeing you more clearly. Your real qualities, the ones that were always buried beneath the performance, finally get a chance to surface. And those qualities, your genuine kindness, your real humor, your authentic intelligence, your actual warmth, are far more compelling than any curated version could ever be. Because people can feel the difference between someone who is performing and someone who is being real. Even if they cannot explain it intellectually, they can feel it in their gut. There is a kind of relief that washes over a room when someone stops pretending. It gives everyone else permission to stop pretending too. And that is a rare and beautiful gift. So build that life, the one that feels like home, the one that does not need a caption to feel meaningful, the one that would still feel valuable even if you could never tell a single soul about it. Build the quiet routines that make your mornings feel sacred. Build the relationships that make your heart feel safe. Build the habits that make your body feel strong and your mind feel clear. Build a life so deeply aligned with who you are that noise becomes unnecessary, because your peace speaks louder than any words ever could. But building that life requires confronting something most people spend their entire existence running from, and that confrontation is the subject of what comes next. Chapter 8. Stop wearing a costume to your own life. Here is a question that might make you uncomfortable. How much of your personality is actually yours? And how much of it is a costume you put on every morning to survive the expectations of the world around you? I ask this because I think most people are walking around in disguises they assembled so long ago that they have forgotten they are wearing them. The disguise started in childhood. You learned which behaviors earned love and which ones earned punishment. You learned which parts of yourself were welcomed and which parts made people uncomfortable. And piece by piece, you constructed a version of yourself that was designed not to express who you are, but to protect you from rejection. That costume served you for a long time. It kept you safe. It helped you navigate difficult environments. It earned you belonging in spaces where your real self might have been rejected. And I want to honor that. Survival strategies are not shameful. They are intelligent. Your younger self did the best they could with the tools they had. But here is the problem. A costume that protected you at 15 can imprison you at 35. The strategies that kept you safe as a child often become the very things that keep you stuck as an adult. People-pleasing kept you loved as a kid, but it keeps you exhausted as a grown-up. Staying small kept you safe from criticism, but it keeps you invisible now. Agreeing with everyone avoided conflict in your household, but it makes your adult relationships feel hollow and one-dimensional. At some point, you have to ask yourself whether the protection is still necessary or whether it has become the cage. And this question terrifies most people because removing the costume means risking rejection from people who only ever loved the disguise. If you have spent 20 years being the agreeable one, the easy-going one, the one who never makes waves, what happens when you suddenly start speaking your truth? What happens when you set a boundary for the first time in a relationship that never had one? What happens when you say no to something you have been saying yes to for years? The honest answer is that some people will not handle it well. Some people fell in love with the costume, not the person wearing it. And when the costume comes off, they may feel confused, threatened, or even betrayed. They might say things like, "You have changed. I do not even recognize you anymore." And technically, they are right. You have changed. But you did not become someone new. You finally became someone real. This process is one of the loneliest passages of growth. I am not going to sugarcoat that. There are days during this transition where you feel like you belong nowhere. The old version of you no longer fits, but the new version has not fully formed yet. You are between identities, and that in-between space is deeply disorienting. You might question everything. You might wonder if you are making a terrible mistake. You might feel the gravitational pull of your old patterns begging you to come back where it is safe and familiar. But here is what I need you to remember during those moments. Discomfort during growth is not a sign that you are going in the wrong direction. It is actually one of the most reliable signs that you are going in the right direction. Comfort keeps you where you are. Discomfort is the engine of transformation. If becoming a better person felt easy, everyone would do it. The difficulty is precisely what makes it valuable. And I promise you this, on the other side of that discomfort, there is a version of you that feels lighter than anything you have ever experienced. A version that no longer exhausts itself performing for people who never bothered to look past the surface, a version that no longer shrinks to make others comfortable, a version that moves through the world with a quiet certainty that comes from finally knowing who you are and being willing to stand in that truth, even when the room is not clapping. People will always have opinions about your life. That is not going to change. But here is what changes. Their opinions stop mattering so much. Not because you become cold or careless, but because your own opinion of yourself finally becomes louder. When you build genuine self-respect through discipline, through honesty, through keeping promises to yourself, the noise of the outside world naturally turns down. You stop hearing every criticism at full volume. You stop absorbing every judgment like a sponge. You develop a kind of internal filter that lets the meaningful stuff through and quietly deflects the rest. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. And aligned people move through life differently than everyone else. They make decisions faster because they are not polling the room for permission. They recover from setbacks quicker because their identity is not built on fragile external approval. They attract better relationships because they are no longer performing, and authenticity draws people in far more powerfully than any mask ever could. So take off the costume. Not all at once if that feels too frightening. Start with small acts of honesty. Say what you actually think instead of what feels safe. Make one decision this week based entirely on what you want, rather than what will be accepted. Set one boundary that you have been avoiding because you were afraid of someone's reaction. And then notice what happens. Notice how it feels to tell the truth. Notice how the ground does not actually collapse beneath your feet the way you always feared it would. Because here is the secret nobody tells you about authenticity. It does not push the right people away. It draws them closer. The people who can handle the real you are the people who belong in your life, and the people who cannot handle the real you were never really in your life to begin with. They were in a relationship with the costume, and that relationship was never going to make either of you happy. What comes next is perhaps the most transformative chapter of this entire journey, because there is a specific kind of decision that accelerates everything we have been talking about. A decision that terrifies most people, but liberates the ones brave enough to make it. Chapter 9. The Sacred Art of Vanishing. There is something almost revolutionary about choosing to disappear for a while, not disappearing in a dramatic way, not storming out of your life with an announcement, not posting a cryptic message about stepping back for your mental health. I mean, genuinely, quietly, without fanfare, removing yourself from the noise and turning all of your attention inward. Most people will never do this because the modern world has made stillness feel like failure. If you are not visible, you must not be relevant. If you are not producing, you must not be valuable. If you are not constantly connected, you must be fallen behind. This is the unspoken pressure that keeps people chained to their phones, their feeds, their inboxes, and their obligations 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I want to challenge that belief because I think it is quietly destroying people. Think about any significant repair job you have ever witnessed. A building being renovated, a road being resurfaced, a bridge being reinforced. What is the first thing that happens? The area gets closed off. Access gets restricted. Signs go up that say, "Under construction, do not enter." Why? Because meaningful rebuilding requires a protected space. You cannot reconstruct a foundation while people are still walking across it. You cannot repair something while it is simultaneously being used. Your life works exactly the same way. If you are trying to fundamentally rebuild yourself, your habits, your mindset, your emotional health, your discipline, you need a protected space in which to do that work. And that space often means temporarily reducing access. It means fewer conversations, fewer social obligations, fewer commitments to things that drain your energy without feeding your growth. It means, for a season, becoming less available to the world so you can become more available to yourself. This terrifies people because we are conditioned to equate presence with worth. If I am not there, will they forget about me? If I step back, will I lose my place? If I go quiet, will people assume I have failed? These fears are understandable. They are deeply human. But they are also the exact fears that keep people stuck in cycles of depletion, performing for an audience when they desperately need to be healing behind the curtain. Here is what actually happens when you give yourself permission to disappear for a while. At first, it feels like withdrawal. And honestly, it is withdrawal. You are withdrawing from the constant stimulation of noise, approval, and external input that your brain has become dependent on. The first few days, maybe the first few weeks, feel restless. Your fingers itch to check notifications. Your mind wanders toward what people might be thinking about your absence. You feel the pull of old habits, the familiar comfort of distraction, the temptation to fill the silence with anything other than your own thoughts. But if you hold your ground, if you sit with that discomfort instead of running from it, something begins shifting beneath the surface. The mental fog that you did not even realize was there starts clearing. Thoughts that have been buried under layers of noise begin surfacing. Emotions that you have been avoiding start arriving, not to destroy you, but to be processed. Truths you've been running from finally catch up, not to punish you, but to set you free. This is the part of rebuilding that nobody talks about because it is not inspiring on the surface. It does not make for good content. There is nothing photogenic about sitting alone in a quiet room confronting the parts of yourself that need to change. There is nothing glamorous about admitting that your habits have been holding you back, that your patterns have been self-destructive, that the life you have been living was built more on fear than on purpose. But this raw, unglamorous, deeply private confrontation with yourself is where all real transformation begins. Every single person who has genuinely changed their life went through this portal. They all had their season of vanishing, their period of brutal self-honesty, their time in the quiet where they stopped performing long enough to finally meet themselves. And here is something that might surprise you about this process. When you start rebuilding your identity in private, you also start releasing your old identity. And releasing an old identity is a form of grief. You are saying goodbye to the person you used to be, even if that person was struggling, even if that person was unhappy. There was a familiarity to that version of you, a comfort in the known, even when the known was painful. Letting go of it feels like losing something, even though what you are gaining is immeasurably more valuable. Be gentle with yourself during this process. Rebuilding is not linear. There will be days when you feel incredibly strong, like a new person is emerging from the rubble. And there will be days when you feel like you have slipped right back to where you started. Both of those days are part of the journey. Both are necessary. The strong days build your confidence. The difficult days build your resilience. And together, they create a version of you that is not just different on the surface, but fundamentally transformed at the foundation. Many people ask how long this process takes, and I wish I could give a precise answer. But the truth is, it takes exactly as long as it needs to. For some people, a few focused months create dramatic shifts. For others, the rebuilding stretches across a year or longer. The timeline is less important than the commitment. As long as you refuse to abandon the process, as long as you keep showing up for yourself, even on the days when nothing feels different, the transformation will come. It always comes for the ones who stay. And when it does, when you finally emerge from your quiet season carrying a new version of yourself, something beautiful happens. People notice. They cannot quite name what changed. They might say, "You seem calmer, more grounded, more sure of yourself. Your eye contact feels different. Your energy feels different. The way you carry yourself has shifted in a way that commands a quiet kind of respect." But what they are really seeing is someone who went away for a while, not to escape life, but to finally face it. Someone who chose the difficult, lonely, unglamorous work of self-reconstruction. Someone who trusted the process enough to endure the silence and emerged on the other side carrying a peace that cannot be shaken by outside circumstances. That is the sacred art of vanishing, not running away from your life, but running toward yourself. And when you return, when you step back into the world carrying the discipline, the clarity, and the emotional strength you built in the quiet, your entire presence becomes the proof that the silence was worth every single second. Now, everything we have talked about so far has been building toward something, a realization that ties all of these chapters together and reveals why quiet consistency is the most powerful force on earth. And that is exactly where we are headed next. Chapter 10, The Quiet Revolution, happening inside you right now. I want to tell you something that you probably need to hear today. You are closer than you think. I know it might not feel that way. I know there are mornings where you wake up and look at your life and wonder if anything is actually changing. The routines feel repetitive. The progress feels microscopic. The gap between where you are and where you want to be still looks enormous. And on those mornings, it is incredibly tempting to believe that all of this effort, all of this discipline, all of this silent work is leading nowhere. But let me offer you a different lens. Imagine you are standing in a dark room holding a single candle. The room is so vast and so dark that your tiny flame barely seems to make a difference. You can only see a few feet in front of you. Beyond that, everything is shadow. From your perspective, it feels like the darkness is winning. It feels like your small light is meaningless against something so overwhelming. But here is what you cannot see from inside that room. From the outside, your candle is the only light visible. It cuts through the darkness in a way that is unmistakable. People can see it from a great distance. And every day that you keep that flame alive, every day you refuse to let it go out, the light grows just a little brighter. You cannot perceive the difference from where you are standing because growth at close range is nearly invisible. But it is happening. It is absolutely, undeniably happening. This is the nature of quiet transformation. It betrays you with its slowness. It frustrates you with its subtlety. It tempts you to quit by hiding its progress behind the ordinary appearance of daily life. But underneath that ordinary surface, tectonic plates are shifting. The person you were 6 months ago and the person you are today are not the same person. The differences might be invisible to the naked eye, but they are real. The way you handle disappointment has changed. The way you respond to conflict has changed. The speed at which you recover from a bad day has improved. The clarity with which you see your own patterns has sharpened. These are not small things. These are the foundations upon which entirely new lives are built. Most people dramatically underestimate what 1 year of genuine focus can produce. Not 1 year of talking about focus. Not 1 year of planning to focus. 1 year of actually doing the work consistently, quietly, without waiting for anyone's applause. In that single year, a person can completely rewire their relationship with discipline. They can transform their physical health. They can rebuild their financial habits from the ground up. They can heal emotional wounds they have been carrying for a decade. One focused year has the power to make the previous 10 years of drifting feel like a distant memory. But here's the part that breaks most people. That year is not dramatic. It is not cinematic. There is no soundtrack playing in the background while you train in the rain. There is no montage that fast-forwards through the boring parts. The boring parts are the entire thing. The boring parts are where the transformation lives. And the people who cannot make peace with that boredom, the people who need every day to feel exciting and significant, are the same people who restart their goals every January and wonder why nothing ever changes. Consistent people understand something that restless people do not. They understand that showing up on the days when nothing exciting happens is worth more than showing up on the days when motivation is high. Because motivated days are easy. Everyone shows up when they feel inspired. The real question is whether you show up on a gray Wednesday afternoon when the work feels pointless, when no one is watching, when your body is tired and your mind is suggesting 100 easier alternatives. If you show up then, you are building something that motivation alone could never construct. And here is the beautiful truth waiting for you on the other side of that consistency. One day, and this day arrives more suddenly than you expect, you will catch a glimpse of yourself and barely recognize the person looking back. Not because you changed overnight, but because all of those invisible days finally accumulated into something visible. The discipline you practiced in private will have sculpted your habits into something powerful. The emotional work you did in silence will have created a steadiness that people can feel the moment they are near you. The boundaries you set when it was terrifying to set them will have constructed a life that finally feels like it belongs to you. And the most extraordinary part is that you will not feel the need to announce it. You will not feel the urge to perform your transformation for the world. Because by that point, the transformation itself will be so deeply integrated into who you are that showing it off would feel unnecessary. Your calmness will speak for itself. Your discipline will speak for itself. Your peace will speak for itself. And the people around you will feel the shift without you ever needing to say a single word about it. That is what real change looks like. Not loud, not performative, not packaged for consumption. Just a human being who quietly decided to become different and then stayed committed long enough for that decision to reshape every corner of their existence. Chapter 11. Protect your peace like everything depends on it. I need to share something with you that took me a long time to fully understand. Peace is not a luxury. Peace is not something you earn after you have accomplished everything on your list. Peace is not a reward that waits for you at the finish line of success. Peace is the vehicle. Without it, you cannot drive anywhere worth going. Think about every major mistake you have ever made in your life, every impulsive decision you regret, every argument that spiraled out of control, every relationship you damaged with words you did not mean. Now think about the state of mind you were in when those things happened. Were you calm? Were you centered? Were you thinking clearly? Almost certainly not. Almost every significant mistake a person makes happens when their inner world is in chaos, when anxiety is running the show, when emotional exhaustion has depleted their judgment, when noise has crowded out clarity. This is why peace is not optional. It is operational. Your ability to think clearly, make wise decisions, maintain healthy relationships, and stay committed to your long-term goals all depend on the condition of your inner environment. A chaotic mind produces chaotic results. A peaceful mind produces focused, intentional, stable results. It really is that simple. And yet most people treat their peace like it is the least important thing they own. They give it away freely. They allow anyone to disrupt it at any time. They tolerate environments that shred their calmness on a daily basis and then wonder why their life feels so out of control. They would never hand their wallet to a stranger on the street, but they hand their peace of mind to strangers on the internet every single day without a second thought. Let me be direct with you. Protecting your peace requires saying no to things that most people say yes to. It requires walking away from conversations that everyone else stays in. It requires disappointing people who have grown accustomed to your unlimited availability. And none of that is easy. Boundaries never feel comfortable in the beginning, especially if you have spent your entire life without them. But here is what happens when you start treating your peace as sacred. Your nervous system begins to heal. The constant low-level anxiety that you thought was just part of being alive starts quieting down. Your sleep improves because your mind is no longer processing 100 unresolved conflicts when your head hits the pillow. Your relationships improve because you are showing up from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Your creativity returns because a calm mind has room for ideas that a cluttered mind cannot access. Peace is not passive. Peace is one of the most productive states a human being can operate in. A peaceful mind notices opportunities that an anxious mind misses. A peaceful mind responds to challenges with clarity, while an overwhelmed mind reacts with panic. A peaceful mind builds with intention, while a chaotic mind builds with desperation. So stop apologizing for protecting it. Stop feeling guilty for removing yourself from situations that steal it. Stop explaining your boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. Your peace is not negotiable. Treat it that way. Guard it fiercely. Rebuild it when it breaks. Prioritize it above comfort, above popularity, above the temporary approval of people who will forget your sacrifice by tomorrow. Because at the end of everything, when the noise dies down and the performances end and the applause fades, the only thing that remains is the quality of your inner life, and that quality is determined entirely by how seriously you protect it. Chapter 12. Become a stranger to your former self. One of the most powerful moments a person can experience is standing in front of a mirror and realizing they no longer recognize the person who used to live in that same body. The fears that once controlled every decision have loosened their grip. The habits that once ran on autopilot have been replaced with intentional routines. The voice inside that used to whisper, "You are not enough," has been slowly drowned out by a new voice, one built from evidence, from kept promises, from survived challenges. This kind of transformation does not arrive like a lightning bolt. It arrives like a sunrise, so gradually that you barely notice it happening, and then one morning you look up and the entire sky is different. But I want to be honest with you about something. Becoming a stranger to your former self is not entirely comfortable. There is a grief that comes with outgrowing old versions of yourself, even versions that were not serving you well. The person who used to tolerate disrespect, the person who used to beg for validation, the person who used to abandon their own needs to keep everyone else comfortable. That person was struggling, yes, but that person was also familiar. And letting go of what is familiar, even when it is painful, always involves a kind of mourning. Allow that mourning. Do not rush past it. Do not pretend you do not feel it. Acknowledge that the old version of you did their best with what they had. Thank them for carrying you this far, and then gently, firmly, lovingly let them go, because you cannot carry your old identity into your new life. They are not compatible. The habits that kept you safe in your old life will keep you small in your new one. The beliefs that protected you as a child will imprison you as an adult. The relationships that matched your former energy will suffocate your evolved energy. Growth always requires release. You must release old habits, old thought patterns, old definitions of yourself, old relationships that only function when you remain unchanged. And every time you release something, you create space for something better to enter, better habits, better beliefs, better relationships, a better, truer, more aligned version of who you were always meant to become. Over time, discipline stops being something you do and becomes something you are. Peace stops being something you chase and becomes something you carry. Confidence stops being something you borrow from praise and becomes something you generate from within. And all of those changes, every single one, were built during the quiet seasons, the ones nobody clapped for, the ones nobody documented, the ones where the only witness to your transformation was you and whatever force you believe watches over your growth in the silence. That is the deepest power of quiet rebuilding. It does not just change your behavior, it changes your identity. And a changed identity does not revert. A person who has truly transformed at the identity level does not go back to their old patterns because those patterns no longer match who they have become. It would feel like trying to wear clothes that are 3 sizes too small. The fit is wrong. The discomfort is immediate. And the person knows, without anyone needing to tell them, that they have outgrown that version of themselves permanently. Chapter 13. The less you explain, the deeper your freedom. Here is the final truth I want to leave you with, and it might be the most liberating one of all. You do not owe the world an explanation for who you are becoming. You do not need to justify your distance. You do not need to defend your boundaries. You do not need to present a carefully constructed argument for why you chose growth over stagnation. You do not need to convince anyone that your path is valid. You do not need to write a thesis on why you walked away from situations that were destroying your peace. You simply needed to walk away, and that is enough. Most people exhaust themselves trying to be understood by everyone. They spend hours crafting the perfect explanation for why they changed. They rehearse conversations in their mind where they finally make someone see their perspective. They argue with ghosts, replaying old conflicts and rewriting the script so that this time, the other person finally gets it. But here's the thing about understanding. It cannot be forced. You can explain yourself with perfect clarity, with flawless logic, with absolute honesty, and some people will still choose to misunderstand you. Not because your explanation was insufficient, but because their perception of you has nothing to do with your reality. People see you through the filter of their own experiences, their own insecurities, their own limitations. And no amount of words can change a filter that someone is not willing to remove. Once you truly internalize this, something extraordinary happens. You stop spending your energy on explanations and start investing it in action. You stop defending your choices and start living them. You stop arguing for your vision and start building it. The energy you use to pour into being understood gets redirected into becoming undeniable. And that is where the magic lives, not in being understood, but in being undeniable. When your results speak, when your transformation is visible, when your peace is palpable, you no longer need words to justify your journey. The journey justifies itself. The life you built in the silence becomes the loudest testimony you could ever offer. And the people who are meant to understand will understand, not because you explained it to them, but because they can feel it radiating from every part of who you have become. So let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let them create their own narratives about why you changed. You do not need to participate in that conversation. Your only job is to keep building, keep growing, keep showing up for yourself with the quiet consistency that brought you this far. Everything else is noise, and you have already proven that you know how to rise above the noise. At the end of the day, the people who completely reshape their lives are almost never the loudest voices in the room. They are the quiet ones, the ones who stopped chasing validation and started chasing growth, the ones who protected their peace when the world told them they were being selfish, the ones who kept showing up on the boring days, the lonely days, the invisible days when nobody saw their effort and nobody cared. Real transformation is quiet. It happens when you stop announcing every intention and start executing in silence. When you stop reacting to every opinion and start investing in your own evolution. When you stop performing for an audience and start building for yourself. Quietly, patiently, relentlessly. There will be seasons where nobody understands your journey, seasons where progress feels invisible, seasons where the only thing keeping you going is the stubborn refusal to quit on yourself. Do not fear those seasons. Those are the seasons where everything changes. Those are the seasons where discipline is forged, where emotional strength is built, where the foundation of your future is being poured in absolute silence. And then one morning, without warning, your entire life will look completely different. Your mind will be calmer. Your confidence will be steadier. Your habits will be stronger. Your peace will be deeper. Not because you talked about becoming someone new, but because you stayed quiet long enough, worked hard enough, and believed in yourself long enough to actually become that person. You do not need anyone's permission to transform. You do not need the world to understand your path. You do not need applause to validate your effort. All you need is the courage to disappear for a while, the discipline to keep building when nobody is watching, and the faith to trust that quiet consistency will always eventually produce extraordinary results. Because the person who keeps moving forward in silence while everyone else is distracted by the noise will one day build a life that nobody saw coming. And that life will not need a megaphone. It will not need an announcement. It will not need a single word of explanation, because by then, everything about the way you carry yourself, everything about the way you think, everything about the way you move through the world will already tell the story, quietly, powerfully, unmistakably,